Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sanne Smith, and I'm the Program Director and the Lecturer of the Stanford Graduate School of Education for the program Education Data Science. So hello, like I said, I am the Program Director of a master's program here, and I'm also a lecturer here at the GSC. I focus on teaching students how to consume quantitative research, how to process their data and visualize it. I do an introduction course to machine learning and teach students about advanced methods like hierarchical linear modeling and structural equation modeling. As a program director, I work with students of the program in all stages of it. So that means recruiting, admissions, but also advising and mentoring them. My own research focuses on understanding what makes for diverse and thriving networks. So today I wanted to talk to you about education data science. And I wanted to start with what it is in the first place. So if we think about what education data science is, one of these Venn diagram comes to mind pretty quickly. You probably have seen them for other topics as well. So education data science finds itself at the intersection of computer science, statistics, and education theory and practice. So if you think about that, computer science is all about creating abstractions around computational structures and algorithms that follow these abstractions. Statistics is all about understanding the interdependence of samples, models, and generalizability of population of interest. Then a key concept of data science is that content or domain knowledge is essential. And that is the space that education data science is in. So right there in the middle. So what are some things that we know about this space and that's new about this space? Well, there's a few things that are new. First of all, there is way more data than we had before. On the other hand, we also have new types of data. So think about unstructured data, such as text from discussion fora or clickstream data that is very granular, very fine-grained. And the other thing that's up is computational power. So we think about sort of the traditional methods that we've used in the field of education, such as regression. It's really great. It's great for its simplicity, and a lot of people do it. It's very easy to interpret the parameters, and it's great for making inferences about small samples to a wider population. But now that we have the promise of increased computational power and big new types of data, we can apply many more models than we have before. So long story short, we are awash in new data, more data, and we have a myriad of tools to make sense of it all. So let's take a look at the primary activity that you have seen before. So remember this article that I sent you along? You may have been able to take some time to think about what exactly about this video and this article that I sent you is education data science. Here are some things that I came up with, and I wonder if you had them too in mind. So why would this example be an example of education data science? Well, first of all, it's about this data-driven tool. Data is being used to improve teacher effectiveness. So in this particular video, teachers are making use of regression models and data to understand better whether they are performing well. Another way would, for example, be for people to just go to the classroom and see how this teacher is teaching, or perhaps asking the parents or the students what they think of this teacher. But this particular example is where data is being utilized to gain insight into an education topic of interest. The other thing that might make it data science for you is that the data source is quite particular. It's existing big data. So here the idea is people have already been collecting standardized test scores, not necessarily for this type of research or for this goal, but it's there. We have it from everybody, so why not use it? And then the methodology. In this particular video, which you may or may not have recognized based on your familiarity with quantitative methods, but here a particular regression model is applied, an hierarchical linear regression model to be precise. Another question that I asked you is, what is the claim and what is the evidence? So if we take one step back and think about what is at the heart of this particular teacher evaluation tool, it's the idea that we can look at the difference between predicted performance based on these standardized scores and the actual observed performance from teachers. So just as an example, if I'm a teacher in the 6th grade and I want to see how much value I add to my students, I could start off with what is the standardized score of my students when they join my class at the beginning of the year, and when they complete my class at the end of the year, how are they doing, and how does that compare to what I might have expected based on a particular model? I won't dwell on this one too long, but this is sort of what a value-added model looks like, the one that you've seen in the video. On the one hand, we have data about people's start score. We have then data about what people actually score at the end. And then we have a whole bunch of other data points that we can take into consideration, such as student characteristics. And we can also look at the classroom effect, the teacher effect, the school effect, and maybe some other things that might be important as predictors. Now, the other video that I've showed you, or I've given to you in advance, is this short news flash about a school district being sued. So let's say this tool was implemented in a particular school district, and teachers weren't so happy with it. If you remember from this video, you saw that teachers had hardly any insight what this model did, how it was applied, and they certainly didn't understand why it was used as the sole input for either a bonus for their work or whether they were fired based on this model. And they had a good point. So here are some important questions to ask that you perhaps have also considered. So when we think about education data science, it's not necessarily about just applying the tool. We want to take a much broader look at how these models work and how they measure what we think they measure. So some questions to ask are, example, what data are these models actually based on? So you've seen that these models are based on standardized test scores, but this is just one measure of student performance. And we know from research that these types of test scores actually contain a lot of construct-irrelevant variance, meaning that they capture a lot of things, but not all of it is truly how a student is performing for a particular subject matter. They could have had a bad day, for example, or there is some environmental things going on that can affect how students score on a particular standardized test. They also don't measure a lot of things that we are interested in. So a test score is just one thing, but as teachers, we're also interested in how students enjoy a class, for example, or whether a course is challenging for them and they're learning a lot from it, or how they're feeling about it. So there's a lot of other things that we want to know about students when it comes to evaluating teacher effectiveness than just how students score on this standardized test. It's also really challenging to address selection effects, meaning that we're not exactly sure if the growth of a student in test scores is because the teacher is doing a great job, or whether the teacher happens to teach a population of students that is really awesome, or vice versa, teaching a very challenging student population where we might expect that they won't have that much growth because of various reasons. So addressing exactly what kind of students are paired with what teachers is not straightforward. It's also really difficult to address history effects. So what happens in the meantime? Is this really the teacher that is driving the change in test scores? Or is it more the school? Or is it something else? There's a lot of things that happen during the time that these standardized test scores are taken into account. And it's not just the teacher that is responsible for everything. And then again, it's also not always straightforward to match a teacher to a particular child. Children have, especially in high school, have multiple teachers. There is turnover. There are other influences than the teacher. So the matching process is not always easy. Another thing to take into account, is that the question, what does a low ranking mean, actually? Oh, so sorry, I have a few things there. So this is a distribution of a typical value-added model outcome. So this would be like teacher effectiveness. Some teachers score low, some teachers score high, and then most teachers score average. This is actually a logical consequence of a model like a value-added model. But how do we decide what a low ranking is? In these types of models, somebody has to be at the bottom and somebody has to be on the top, but most will be in the middle. So it's not straightforward to understand what a low rank is, other than it's just somewhere, relative to others. The next point is that these models are also very sensitive to what kind of predictors go in. And so it's really important to know based on what kind of information we're getting at these scores, and that's not always transparent. And then it's also really important that stakeholders, like teachers, have the expertise to interpret the value-added models so they can use them to their advantage, or that the leaders in the school know how to interpret it. And then there might also be some unintended consequences. So, what does it mean for teachers when they feel like they're being evaluated by an algorithm that they don't understand? So these are all some important questions that I wanted to highlight just as an example of what kind of questions are really important when we think about using data science for education. If you're interested, here are some more articles that you can read. I'm not going to solve these questions in our time here. We simply don't have the time. I just wanted to have this as an example to pique your interest, and also use it as a transition into why I think it's really important to teach students about data science in education. And it all boils down to this. There are opportunities and there are challenges when it comes to education data science. So, I consider myself a believer that data can be informative of learning. So, we took the advantage of, we took the example of teacher effectiveness, but this holds true for many education topics. We have data about it, and it makes sense that we utilize it. On the other hand, utilization of data, just because it's big and fancy and we have a cool model, doesn't mean that it comes without challenges. And especially in education, where the stakes can be quite high when it comes to our students and our learners, we want to be really mindful and understand what is important to education and how these models inform our decisions. So I started off this talk talking about what is education data science, but another really important question is, why education data science? Why do we need this specialty? And that is, we need to train our next cohort of education professionals. That means that we have to ask critical questions and that we have to communicate uncertainty that comes with this field in an appropriate way. So when we think about that, new sources and types of data are transforming all kinds of sectors of research and industry, the field of education is no exception. So thinking that researchers, school districts, university, edtech companies, they're increasingly able to acquire complex data, but we need people, we need professionals that can make sense of that data with a keen eye for organizing the infrastructures and the skills to process, to analyze, to visualize, to communicate, and to understand these findings that inform decisions about education. This means that these professionals requires both the technical skills and the domain knowledge. And currently, people have to cobble it up by themselves. People get it through wholly idiosyncratic means, and that is problematic at worst, or maybe inefficient at best. So when we started this master's program, the goal was that we would provide students the opportunity to engage both with courses in education and courses across campus that help students in gaining the technical expertise to work with a wide variety of data sources. Oh, understand stakeholders, that one too. So this is our first cohort. It's the inaugural cohort of the EDS Master's Program. I direct it and I teach various courses in statistics and data science. And I'm 1 year into this new program. I have 14 amazing students that you see here. What's really interesting also is that the EDS MS students seem to be really different from traditional data science students. The majority of applicants and admitted students identify as women, 75% to be precise, whereas you see that programs in computer science and statistics and data science, they draw about 15 to 20% female students. So it means that we're drawing a much more diverse crowd. Same goes for where they're from. Half of my cohort has an undergraduate degree in the STEM field, whereas others are trained in the social sciences. But what they share is the realization that data science has an important role to play in advancing learning for all. So our program is 2 years. It's cohort-based, small, 10, 15 students. And like I said, they get coursework both in technical courses, data science concepts, programming and statistical analyses, but also in education courses. There's an internship in the middle and a capstone project. I wanted to close this presentation with just showing off what our students are doing, because I think it's pretty exciting. So what do our students do? I'm only 1 quarter in, so it's still early. That said, I'm happy to report that our students are really engaging in very fun and interesting and important work. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. So we have a group, for example, that is working on a personalized competency-based upskilling and career navigator. They're calling it Skillet. And what they like to do is use clustering methods to better understand a match between adult learners that already have a job and how they might re-educate themselves to a different career. We have a group that is interested in early childhood program evaluation. So their question is, how effective are early childhood programs? And they want to use data science for that. Another group is interested in segregation. How does segregation reduce education inequality? And they want to use national data across school districts in the United States to better understand, which is a big job to make sure that you have the right data on every level. Another group is interested in personalization of assessment. So how do you improve the current models that help us understand what students know? It's called latent knowledge estimation. So theirs is pretty technical, thinking about how to improve models that already exist. And the last one is interested in mapping the education technology landscape by doing content analysis on both academic areas as sort of the industry, by looking at what's available in app stores and what researchers write about. So they're going to unleash a couple of algorithms actually to better understand what is going on in the education technology landscape. All right, and that brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I have piqued your interest in what education data science is. I think it's a fascinating and important field that we are really excited to engage with, but we want to do so in a sensitive and thoughtful way. That's what this program is all about. So thank you for listening. You can email me questions if you have any on sannesmith@stanford.edu. I'm also on Twitter. You can find the link in my slides.